Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children?
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about Robert Pattinson. And tentacles.
There's your intro.
We are off
There we
to
go.
a great start.
Somebody please think of the children.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And June is Pride Month, so each week our guest will be a member of the LGBTQ plus horror community and will bring with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is the multi-talented artist, writer, performer, and filmmaker Anthony Hudson. Best known as the self-professed drag clown Carla Rossi, they're also the host, programmer, and co-creator of Portland's LGBTQIA horror series, Queer Horror, the only ongoing exclusively LGBTQ horror screening series in the country. They are also the co-host of the Gaylords of Darkness podcast. A gifted performer, they're also the force behind live shows like Looking for Tiger Lily and Clown Down Failed to Mount. Welcome to the show, Anthony!
Oh my god, thank you for having me.
We're so excited you're here.
We're so excited you're here.
I could not be more stoked, especially to talk about what we're going to talk about.
Oh, I know.
So good.
We're here to talk about lobsters, right?
Lobsters,
Exactly.
tentacles, mermaids, and Willem Dafoe's penis. That is legendary, apparently. Have you ever heard that Willem Dafoe's penis is like legendary?
What?
The legend,
No.
does it have a ballad of its own?
It should, but apparently, okay. I'm so sorry we're not launching into this interview right away, but so apparently Willem Dafoe's dick is huge.
Oh.
And so in Antichrist, have either of you seen Antichrist, the Lars von Trier movie?
I have not.
It is so on my list, and I have no excuse at this point.
No, you do. It's like a lot, but and there's a shot of a penis that is supposed to be Willem Dafoe's penis. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna keep you in suspense. The train's coming.
What a perfect time for a train to come by.
Clang, clang, clang goes the trolley. Yeah, I'm just wondering about that penis.
I know, right?
All right, and we're back. So there's a scene. It's like a black and white slow-mo sex scene. And
The best kind.
and it's very much shows a penis going into a vagina.
Oh.
But apparently they brought in a penis stunt double because Willem Dafoe's penis was too big.
Oh.
And I don't actually know if that's true, but that's the tale on the internet, and I would like to believe that that is canon and that that is correct. So
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe has a monster penis.
He's got that Green Goblin Poseidon penis.
Oh my god. Does he call his dog the Green Goblin?
I hope so.
I'm now wondering if there is like a Green Goblin dildo.
Oh my god, there has to be.
There has to be.
There's
And it
definitely
shoots
a
out little
Poseidon.
pumpkin bombs.
Oh God.
Look, people are into that ovipositor thing. And you
I
know
saw
what?
those xenomorph eggs.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, like, it's not for me, but if it is good for you and it's safe, then you know what?
We are 3.5 minutes in and already off the train.
It's Pride Month.
It's Pride
It
Month.
is Pride Month.
So anyway, talking about massive dongs and dildos, Anthony,
Hello.
how did you get into horror?
Well, let
me
me
about your
tell you.
Does it involve Willem Dafoe's dick?
It all started back in the 1970s. I got into horror, like, being this weird little gay kid in a small town, I was just drawn to the fantastic. Horror for me was
Okay.
like, it was like fairy tales, and like, I saw Beetlejuice really young growing up, and it just clicked. Like,
Ugh,
Delia Dietz,
Beetlejuice.
legend for all time. I mean, everyone loves Lydia. Lydia's cool. Like, goth icon, thank you. Delia Dietz, however, I'm like, that's the queen for me.
Right,
So I see this incredible artist who inspires me to become an artist, but I also see this like fantastic world where everything is in crazy day glow colors, and there's like Miss Argentina, like a formative drag queen, like, and Beetlejuice himself, like he's a voice actor, he's a zombie, he's just crazy. It was so surreal and fantastic that it just planted the seed, or the ovum, if you will, so early. And then from there, I watched Creature from the Black Lagoon a little later with my brother, and it terrified me, like in second grade. And then like any weird developing queer kid, I was like, hey, zombies and slasher films, and just fell in love, and it's been a part of my life ever since.
I have been like so fascinated, I think, both like as I've come out as like a queer woman and also learning more about horror and doing this podcast, like how many people in the queer community just love horror and like how we go to horror for comfort. It's so cool and weird and interesting, and I kind of love it, and I just like wanted to say it because it's so interesting how we all are like, yep, horror, that's where we would like to go. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
And I mean,
best.
that's why it's always been, even in my work in the theater world or the art world or any weird box I find myself delineated into, like horror is always going to cross over in with all of them because it's so central to my identity as a queer person. And I think horror is intrinsically queer in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But transitioning, so you loved horror, you were growing up, realizing you're queer. How did you get into drag?
Well, it all started back in the 1970s. I think this was the same weird queer kid that was sitting at home watching movies I wasn't supposed to be watching by myself, right? Like that would come on cable or whatever like free channel we had at the time. Like I would watch these horror movies. I would stay up late and watch like Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that. And then I would also watch films like Priscilla Queen of the Desert or Stonewall, the old like 95 Stonewall. And I've started to really fall in love with these drag creatures, these like kind of ethereal sort of priestess-like creatures that, especially what I loved about like drag leading up to, pre RuPaul's Drag Race, like drag in the 90s and 80s. You never really saw the drag queen outside of drag. And then there's like in films like Priscilla, like they never get out of drag, which is like, are these even drag queens or are these just like full on trans women? The film kind of confuses it. But there was less of a separation between drag as like an occupation, like what Drag Race has made it, and drag as like the lifestyle, like who the person is.
Right.
And so I was always so blown away by this. And I was just drawn to the ability to like become another person while also being intrinsically yourself. And that just really spoke to me. I think I was really young. I had one out relative growing up that was my uncle. He's my favorite person in the world. I was at his birthday party when I was like 10. And it was around the time I was just discovering these movies. And there was this woman that was so fantastic at this party, and I was obsessed with her. And my mom leaned over and she's like, "That's a man." And she was like really judgy about it and Catholic.
Yeah.
And
as some, a lot of parents are.
Judgy and Catholic, my favorite genre. And I like see, but then looking back at this person with that information, my whole world exploded. And that's, I think that was when it set the seed, once again, the ovum, where I was like, the world is so much more complicated than what it tells me it is.
Yeah.
And I think that was my real entry point for drag, was that it was this place where you could be so much more and yet exactly who you are.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
And how did you create Carla Rossi?
Well, I was really drunk, which is the truth.
How every good story starts.
Was this back in 1973 as well?
This was back in 1973, just right after my time in Nam. And well, that's the fun thing about having a drag character. I mean, I say character, but really she is me. She's me at my worst and my best. Carla Rossi is my Super Saiyan, my ultimate form. And she is an immortal character.
A+ Dragon Ball Z reference.
Thank you. She's this immortal character, so I can just drop her into any time period I want. Like, oh yeah, Carla was at Nam. Oh yeah, Carla hung out with joined this folk group in the 60s that turned out to be the Manson family. Oops. And
that's a dark time for Carla.
It was one of very, very many dark times. And so I kind of fell in love with this character over time, and this aspect of myself, and playing with the different litanies of voices within my being, I guess. And I embraced it fully. Like when I was in my early 20s, I was working at the mall here in Portland, Oregon, and I was living kind of a small, sheltered, post-small town life, trying to convince myself to go to art school. I started hanging out with Jinx Monsoon through another friend.
Oh my god, yes!
Yeah, and I mean, this was back when she was a Portlander. This was like this was like 5 years at least before she was on Drag Race. She's a very good friend of mine. I love her very much.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
She's the best. And just going and hanging out with her, meeting her, hanging out with her, and seeing this person who was able to do everything that I'd always wanted to do, like MCing, stand-up comedy, singing, acting. Like, she was making the work for herself. And I was always drawn to theater, especially as I developed as a teenager in high school. Theater is what saved my life in high school. But I was so tired of all the male roles that you'd get. Or like, I never saw myself in them. Like, I saw myself as a gender confused person that I am. I saw myself more drawn to these women's roles. Yeah. And I saw that Jinx was able to make, as an actor, Jinx was making all that work for herself by doing Jinx. Long story short, Jinx caused the breakup of one of my relationships. It was a great thing that happened. She didn't really cause it. She just set the fulcrum in motion, like most magical priestesses and tricksters do. And I found myself going out, getting drunk, having my liberation, youthful, post-crushing relationship explosion.
Oh, man.
Putting on drag, going to parties, crashing them, and Carla became a full-fledged persona / version of myself / one of my key art forms after that.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
It was a Pandora's box. It was a terrible thing, but but yes.
And then also, I wanted to touch on your horror series that you co-created, Queer Horror. That's how long has that been going now?
This is year 5. We were actually we've been running Queer Horror. It's like you said in that lovely intro. Thank you so much. It's the only ongoing, regularly happening queer horror film series in the country, which is bizarre to me.
That is bizarre.
That is incredibly bizarre.
And we were just going to celebrate 5 years on March 20th. We had our 5-year anniversary. We were going to show The Lure, with my favorite Killer Polish Mermaid musical.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, so good. And then obviously we know what happened.
What happened?
My microwave broke, that's all. And then I had to end everything.
You know,
I hate when that happens.
I know. Has anyone ever bought a microwave? You just find them. I'm not going to go buy one.
It's actually a really good point.
No, literally, no one has ever bought a microwave.
So
Thank you for just agreeing with me on that.
I was like, wait, actually, that's a very accurate statement. The more I think about the microwaves I've ever had, the more I'm like, I've never purchased a microwave. I've always
just
found
appear.
one, or like it's just been in my apartment. Anyway,
Exactly. And so it was like, you know, since pandemic hit and, you know, our theater had to shutter and all of our lives have shuttered basically, except those of us out protesting. It has been, it's been kind of tricky navigating not having this thing, but it's also been nice to have a little bit of a rest for the first time in like 10 years when I can rest.
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, there's that. But it's still something I miss so much because this is next to running Gaylords of Darkness with Stacey Ponder, like, queer horror, the series is my favorite thing to do. You know, we pitched it 5 years ago. My partner, Jason Edward Davis, who's this awesome painter and he does a lot of horror artwork. He created this image that just had like kind of Rocky Horror style, like big voluptuous lips and dripping letters that said queer horror. And I was pitching a film series to this theater I love, the Hollywood Theater in Portland, Oregon. And I was like, okay, I want to do this thing called queer horror based on this painting. And it was that same question that you brought up, Mary Beth, of like, I had been wondering at that point, I'd always been into horror, but I always had wondered why are queers in particular so drawn to this, like a moth to a flame.
Yeah.
And so this was my way of like kind of figuring it out and asking that question. Like, let's show horror films. Let's get as many queers into the theater as we can and see what the answer is. And, you know, what I've learned in 5 years of now sold out shows almost every month that we do it.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, we fit 400 people in the theater. They're almost all queers or allies. And like, when we're all together watching these films, we all take in all the subtext, all the coding, and it's like church. And it's just like become
that's such a good way to put it. It's like church.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to do. And it's just so beautiful. It's silly. We do like little short kind of parody plays based on the films that are always relative to like contemporary politics and what's happening in the world. We do these little drag and burlesque plays before the film, kind of inspired by what Peaches Christ was doing with Midnight Mass. She's a huge hero of mine.
Oh, yeah.
And then we show the film, and it's just a wonderful way to come together and celebrate these films that really, I think, are ours, that a lot of people don't know are ours.
What I love about this too is that horror is such a communal experience, and when you add that to queer identity as well, that just I want to be in Portland in one of these shows. Like, it sounds so amazing and so like liberating to just be queer and enjoying the thing that you love.
Isn't it nuts that like that's such a bare minimum ask,
right?
And yet it's something that a lot of people don't have, and I've heard that from so many friends nationwide that are like, I want to come be part of this because we don't have this here. And it is really sad that there is not a lot of it, but it's great to see that community is developing more so online. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing about film is we watch them also alone. And especially right now, we're all very insular in how we take in films.
Right.
But and all of the films that we've shown at Queer Horror, like, I only saw them by myself on DVD or VHS as a kid growing up. So a lot of time when I show these films in the theater, they're the first time I'm seeing them on the big screen.
Yeah.
Films are made to be watched with other people. That's what activates them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so great to have that experience.
I also wanted to touch on Gaylords of Darkness, because I love your guys' show. I love it so much. And I just wanted to just say that I really did appreciate both you and Stacey's deep dive into the Joe Bob Briggs fiasco that happened recently. And I don't want to linger on that, but I just wanted to thank you for that, because that was it was really good to listen to that kind of conversation. Because I mean, when you're on Twitter or when you're writing an article or whatever, it's typically a one-way experience. And so to actually listen to you both discuss it was really good. And how did you both create Gaylords of Darkness?
Oh, well, first off, thank you. Stacey and I are two angry DIY punk queer, artists. And that kind of that's how we approach everything we make, and especially making Gaylords together. So I'm really grateful to hear that. Yeah, I actually, like, really early on into my horror development, and just my development as a writer, as a thinker, as an artist, you know, when I went off to college really briefly and then came home after 2 semesters and I was like 20 and then just sat and watched the Cyndi Lauper DVD and cried for like 2 weeks straight after I dropped out of college the first time. And I discovered this website, or discovered, like it never existed before that. I found this website, Final Girl, and it was Stacey Ponder's blog. Mm-hmm. And it was the first place where I ever saw another gay person writing about horror movies. And it wasn't always about that. Like, it came up here and there. And it was so funny. And this person was so obsessed with, like, 70s made-for-TV films and just, like, all this, like, had, like, a weird, like, retro mod aesthetic and the films they appreciated and the references they made. And I was so drawn to it. I thought it was so funny and compelling. And that was, you know, my favorite horror website. That was the thing I always came back to. I approached Stacey. Finally, I reached out to her. Like, I think I'd comment here and there on the boards in the now 15 years that I've been following, Stacey's work. But when we launched Queer Horror, the very first version was as a film festival, as a short film festival, which then became a regular screening series. And I asked Stacey, because she had made some really great short films, including a few with Lena Headey. And I was like, hey, just her. I was like, can I show In Satan's Closet at Queer Horror? And we just started talking after that. And then, you know, 5 years later, or I guess 4 years later, whenever we started Gaylords, like almost a year and a half ago, Stacey wanted to start a podcast and she just reached out to me and she said, do you want to do this with me? And I, one, could not believe I was even being asked because I've idolized this person for a decade at least.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And then two, I was like, I don't know that I have a lot of time to devote to this, but if we're okay setting up these parameters and we just do this, I'm in. And it's been such a blast ever since.
Yeah, you just talked to Luca Guadagnino about Suspiria?
That was weird. Yeah.
I was looking at your Twitter before, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to ask a couple questions about that."
It's nuts seeing my one. It's been a dream getting to work with Stacey, but then just seeing I got to actually meet and hang out with Stacey. Like, our first episode was the first time we ever spoke in person. Like, we even heard each other's voices. And that was just a test to see if we would have any chemistry because we'd only ever emailed before that. And luckily that worked out. But I mean, so it's been a dream just getting to do that. But then like we got to actually hang out and do our first live show on Friday the 13th last December. And we had Amy Steele and Adrian King, and we showed both Friday the 13th, 1 and 2 on 35 millimeter. And it was
fucking cool.
Yeah, it was such a pinch me moment. And now, we've done 5 episodes, I think 4 or 5 episodes on Suspiria now. And we just got
to have... As you should. It's such a good movie.
So good, thank you.
It's what it deserves.
We got to have Luca and Dave on, and that
is so fucking cool.
That's amazing.
It's just, I constantly have these, like, pinch me moments, and it's really, like, I can't stress enough, like, we really don't go out of our ways to seek these things. We've never really been good at promoting ourselves or putting ourselves out there. I think it's just, I'm a firm believer that if you really have passion in something, it will come back to you and it will attract what you're seeking, which kind of sounds like The Secret, which I am not endorsing. But it has worked out for Gaylords in that respect.
That's so cool.
That's going to be the pull quote we're just going to say. Yeah. Anthony believes in The Secret.
Anthony Hudson, endorser of The Secret.
Endorser of The Secret.
All you need is a vision board.
Exclusive podcast content.
Yeah, buy your Gaylord's vision board.
Oh my god. Terry, do we want to talk about what we've been watching recently?
We do.
We do want to talk about it.
We do.
Okay.
We want to talk about it.
For some reason, you said we do, and I was like, that doesn't seem like the right answer. But I don't know what's wrong with me today. Anyway, Terry, what have you been watching recently?
Well, in my quest to get through my backlog of collector's Blu-rays, I watched a movie that posits, what if Jason is British and had fled to America with his mom from an abusive father, and then the events of Camp Crystal Lake happens, and later on he ends up going back to Britain, where he falls in love with a blind woman who doesn't see him for the monster the rest of the world does. And of course, her name is Shelley, because it's a Frankenstein metaphor that's painfully obvious. And it becomes a Lord Byron quoting melodrama in the middle before turning into a slasher at the end again. I'm talking about Unmasked Part 25.
What?
What the fuck is this?
This is a thing?
This is a thing. It's called Unmasked Part 25, and the character's name is Jackson, but he wears a hockey mask, and he's introduced in the beginning. Yes. And he's introduced in the beginning killing a bunch of, like, British punks. One, the first victim, he literally peels the face off and then punches his heart through his chest. And
Okay,
he goes
that's pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
So like the first like 10, 15 minutes, he's going on this murder spree, and it's pretty inventive, considering, you know, the I'm assuming low budget of this movie, and it's kind of funny. And he then is about to kill this woman when he finds out that she's blind, and she was waiting for her date to show up. That she, kind of a blind date. Pardon that, because that wasn't intentional, but it was a blind date. And
Wow.
Confuses Jackson for her date, and they end up going on dates and trying out BDSM sex, and he quotes Lord Byron
While they fuck?
No, before he
okay.
decides to like
Oh, that's what sets the mood.
right.
Nothing gets me wetter than a guy quoting Lord Byron at me.
Famed misogynist Lord Byron.
Lord Byron really gets me in the mood.
I mean, you know, and the other thing is that my favorite part of this movie, and it's such a stupid little moment, but something I had to write down in my notes, was that I was watching it with the subtitles on, because I've gotten into a habit of doing that.
Oh, I do that. I do that too.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like take notes, and when she brings him to her house, she turns on what is described as energetic rock music, and then starts interpretive dancing / voguing to it.
What?
Which is the weirdest combination of things that I've ever seen in dance. It's one of those, like, I love the beginning. I really enjoyed the end. The middle is really slow.
Oh, that's the worst.
It seemed like once they got past this one note joke of the fact that, you know, I mean, because like there is some philosophical underpinnings of like he has been called a monster and therefore he is a monster type thing that is kind of interesting, but like they don't really do much with it, unfortunately. And I went into it thinking I was watching like a parody movie, and then to go from this amazing opening and kind of to the fun ending, and then this middle section is just like him pondering his existence while once in a while trying to perform BDSM sex is just it was a weird ass time.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a roller coaster. Who released it?
It's a Vinegar Syndrome.
Vinegar
release,
Syndrome, okay.
of course.
Oh, okay.
And it's from 1988, and it's
Okay.
it was
this
entertaining.
isn't new?
No, this is an old movie from 1988, and boy, does it wear some of its 1988ness on its sleeve.
Wow.
Like there's a part where he asks her if she's had a lot of men dates, and she's like, no, have you? And he's like, no. She's like, I'm glad it's not safe being bisexual these days. And I'm like, oh, this is 1988. This is
wow.
Yeah. So there's definitely some tone deafness in this movie. And the funny thing is that the writers, like, they credit William Shakespeare for his poetry in it.
Oh, wow.
I don't understand. I don't like IMDb. The writers is Mark Cutworth and William Shakespeare in parentheses poetry. So it's I don't know what to say. It is a movie that I think has some really good practical effects when it uses it, but too much of it is just wasted.
Okay.
But that's pretty much the only thing that I've experienced, except that I've been playing The Last of Us again to prepare for the sequel, and and that was a decision.
Yeah, are you doing okay?
It's
how you feeling? How you feeling over there, buddy?
I forgot how fucking depressive that game is.
Yes.
Have either of you played it?
Yeah, I have.
Are
you a gamer?
Love the first one. I'm deep gamer. I love the first one so much. Actually, I don't even think I'm going to touch the second one because it just sounds way too bleak for me.
Well, I've heard a lot of people say the second one is actually better than the first one.
I've heard that, but I've also heard that it is like
it's really violent. Yeah, I've heard that. Like it's really good, but it's like extremely bleak, and you have to do a lot of fucked up stuff.
Yeah, I was
which
just
is like the first one.
I loved playing a queer teenager in that first game, and the last thing that was going through my head and when I was playing the first game was like, wow, I can't wait to brutalize this queer teenager later in the sequel. So
can't wait. I'm so excited.
I know, I might skip that one, but I love the first game so much.
It's so good. Man, I'll tell you, I was like, yeah, I should play this, not realizing that, you know, in the first, 10 minutes of the game, it's like the world is ending and no one knows what's going on and there's a plague of sorts. I'm like, oh, this is grim.
But the zombie creatures in The Last of Us are so cool. The clickers. Oh, I just think they're such a cool design and such a cool concept.
They really are.
It's so cool.
Fucking mushroom people.
Right. Mushroom head.
But that's basically it for me. What about you, Mary Beth?
So I recently watched Starship Troopers for the first time. And guess
Excuse me,
what?
that was the first time?
That was the first time, and guess what? I fucking love that movie.
Isn't it so fucking good?
So it's
Is
so
it
funny.
not perfect?
It is. Okay, thank you. This is so funny because my partner Steve was like, "Yeah, we should watch." We watched RoboCop. I'm doing a lot of catch up on my holes in especially action movie knowledge. So we watched RoboCop, and I was like, "Okay, fuck yeah, love this." And then he's like, "Oh well, we should watch Starship Troopers." I'm like, "I thought it was." I get Starship Troopers and Super Troopers mixed up, and they are two very, very different movies.
Yeah, this is definitely not the haunting / the house on Haunted Hill situation here, Mary Beth.
Yeah. I just have a problem. I have a problem here, and then it's going to come up again when we talk about the movie you brought today, Anthony, because I also have another one that I get confused with, and it's just I can't keep my shit straight. But I just feel like Starship Troopers has no right to be as perfect as it is, but it is such a good fucking movie. It is funny and gory, and I have a crush on Michael Ironside, I'm not afraid to admit. I just enjoyed every second of it. And I'm so mad I didn't watch it sooner, but I'm so glad I have now seen it because oh my god, it is such a good movie. And it's the alien effects are actually really, really good.
They hold up.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
It
but
really holds up.
In my mind, they're perfect.
They are. They're really good. It's the graphics and everything is so good. It doesn't look cheesy. And Denise Richards is in it, and Neil Patrick Harris is in it. And I was like, oh my god, it's everybody. And then Gary Busey's son is in it.
Dina Meyer.
Oh yes, and it's just such a good movie. And it's just everyone needs to see it. Don't be like me. But I absolutely adored it. So I just wrote an article about this movie called Sector 7. It is a 2011 Korean aquatic horror monster movie that is streaming for free on Tubi. And if you like Underwater, the movie Underwater and aquatic horror, Sector 7 is your shit. It is so cheesy, and it was filmed to be in 3D, so the CGI looks real weird. But it is so deeply bizarre in some aspects. There's a motorcycle race in this oil rig. The whole thing takes place in an oil rig, and it's very similar to Underwater. They're drilling for oil, and they unleash something from the depths. And this came out before Underwater. So there's a motorcycle race at some point, because they brought their motorcycles onto the oil rig. Because, when you go on an oil rig, you want to bring your motorcycles.
Always.
And then the monster is really cool. And have you guys ever seen like a water bear? Those tiny little microscopic things.
Oh my god,
Yeah,
yes.
they like live on the moon and stuff.
Yes. So the monster looks like one of those, but giant, but like not cute. Like a giant water bear with like a lot of tentacles and sharp teeth. And it like nothing can kill it. It literally, it is set on fire. There are multiple explosions. It gets stabbed in the mouth like 40 times, and literally it doesn't die. And I enjoy it because it's like such a relentless creature. And it's like, you get to see it a lot. It's not one of those movies that hides the creature. It's like, when the creature is there, it is like there and eating and killing. And I like that in a monster movie because I feel like sometimes they just like only show you the monster a little bit, and this one is just like, no, fuck that. Like, we're just gonna shove it in your face. So it's streaming on Tubi for free with commercials, and it's available to rent other places. And it's a really enjoyable aquatic horror film. It's kind of cheesy, but like in a really fun way. And I had an amazing time watching it. And I wrote an article for Nightmare on Film Street about it if you need more persuading that it is worth your time. So I recommend that. It's fun, and you can pretend that you're in the water for the summer.
Sign me up. I love a water bear. You had me at water bear.
I love water bears too.
They're so cute.
Anyway, Anthony, what have you been watching?
Well, listen. So pandemic hit. We all got stuck in our homes. I got every streaming service ever. I got Criterion. I got Arrow Video Channel. I got Hulu. I got Netflix.
Wow.
I got Disney Plus. I got all of them except ESPN. I don't need ESPN, but I got all the channels. And then all I have watched since then is Batman the Animated Series over and over and over instead of watching anything offered.
Fuck yes.
I was like right before pandemic, I was like the world's #1 stan for Birds of Prey. I loved it so much.
It's so fucking good.
Thank you so much. It's perfect. Margot Robbie is perfect. Kathy Yan is a genius.
Yes.
And I just I also gay representation with those villains and all the main characters.
It's just so gay.
Such a fan. So I've been in a deep Gotham train since then. Like, I don't play Suicide Squad. I don't play the Joker. I don't play any of the more newfangled stuff unless it has Margot Robbie. Mm-hmm. But I've been like going back to my animated series, and then I've been watching the old Adam West Batman, like the episode with Shelley Winters. And then I've been playing Arkham Asylum again now. So I'm just
shit. Wow, you really are like deep in like a DC Batman hole.
I am going right back there. Cause when I was a kid too, I mean, that was like, when I think about those like horror adjacent dark fairy tales that I loved as a kid, like Batman Returns was one of them. And
I love
Michelle
Batman
Pfeiffer
Returns.
as Catwoman, like she totally, talking about depositing
That's a drag
ovum,
queen right
like,
there.
Yeah, she like really impacted me and set me up for a love affair with these women that reject everything, just like Harley Quinn. So I'm all here for them.
That's all. Do you read the comic books at all?
I have actually. I don't think I've ever read a Batman comic, which is shocking to me.
That is shocking, but there's so many, it's kind of hard to pick. But there's a couple really good like horror volumes that like stand alone. Because I'm not a huge superhero person. Like, I think it's too confusing and complicated.
Yeah, superhero, like it's hard to be a general like lover of superhero comics because it's really hard to keep the continuity straight. Like they just sort of like change every few issues. It's like, okay, now we're going to do this. And it's like, okay, but what's the continuity?
It's really complicated. I don't know, like I'm not even like a big superhero person. Like I'm not really a big fan of like the Marvel movies. I grew up I grew up a deep X-Men stan and Batman stan. And Spider-Man. So for me it was like it was X-Men comics and Spider-Man comics. The Batman comics, for some reason I didn't get into it. It was really about the animated series and the Adam West show and the Michael Keaton, Michelle Pfeiffer Batman Returns.
I mean, that's exactly the same for me. And I mean, X-Men for me because Wolverine. Even before I knew I was gay, I was like, I like this man.
How could you not?
See, me, it was Reba McEntire as Rogue, or I always hoped that she would be Reba McEntire.
I love it.
Wait,
flying around with those yellow cleaning gloves.
Oh my god! Yeah, there are a couple really good horror horror adjacent Batman comics that stand alone, because I like those, but they're like, you don't have to know anything really about like a continuity, which is why I like them.
I was looking at, like, I want to read Long Halloween, or
The Long Halloween, yeah.
Yeah, that one, and like Harleen or two I was looking at to start with, but I'm not.
Yeah, The Long Halloween, and then The Killing. Well, do you like the Joker? Do you care about the Joker, like, as a character?
I used to love him, now I'm not as into him, now that there's Harley Quinn post him.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But Killing Joke is one, actually, I have been
yeah,
wanting to check out, too.
The Killing Joke is really, really good. There's a couple others I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but there's some really good ones that are like...
There's one where like Batman's stuck in the asylum. Is that the one?
Yeah, that's one of them. I cannot... Is that The Long Halloween? I don't know.
I can't remember.
People are going to come for us probably. For
I know.
Not knowing, but like, whatever.
You're going to be canceled.
Yep.
And then there's a really cool Mike Mignola version of Batman that's like a crossover between, it's like the Hell That Came to Gotham or something like that, and it's like Batman in Mike Mignola style, and there's like eldritch horror and stuff, and it's really cool. It's a little bit harder to find, but I found it on eBay, and they're really, I mean, they're beautiful because I love Mike Mignola's style. He did Hellboy, and so
yeah.
Anyway,
well, I'm gonna have to check him out.
You've been living.
Yeah, you've been living in the life though.
This DC life.
I got my my Juicy Couture tracksuit, but it just says Gotham on the back of it.
What color is it?
Neon gray. It's a limited edition.
Limited edition neon gray Juicy Couture suit that says Gotham on the butt or on the back of like this of this jacket.
Oh, on the butt, of course.
Okay, good. I was just making sure. Remember when that was a thing to have sweatpants with a word on the back?
Oh yeah.
Like, why? So, well, we've talked about what we've been watching recently, but Anthony, what movie have you brought with you today that we're gonna talk about?
Well, the movie I am clutching to my bosom today is the 1993 classic? ? Fire in the Sky.
How does it think? What makes it move? Why does it breathe? Questions anyone would ask about a man if they'd never seen one before. So for 5 days, a man was borrowed. The story that Travis Walton and 5 other witnesses told was so unbelievable, so unimaginable, that it has become the most famous case of UFO abduction ever reported.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so for those of you unfamiliar, Fire in the Sky is a film very loosely based on a supposed real-life UFO, good lord, UFO abduction. It follows a logger named Travis Walton. He's an Arizona logger who mysteriously disappears for 5 days in an alleged encounter with a flying saucer in 1975. It only gets weirder from there.
So... Anthony, how old were you when you saw this movie, and what the fuck?
That is exactly my feelings about this film. I was about 5 or 6 or something when I saw this.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. This one was a doozy.
Yeah.
I was already creeped out by aliens, right? Like, aliens are spooky, especially growing up watching Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
All the alien stories are scary. So that was a problem. But then seeing this film, I don't know if, I can't remember if this isn't something my parents would have showed me. I think I must have seen it with, my brother-in-law. My sister is a little bit older than me, and her husband, I think must have showed it to me because they didn't have as much standards as my parents did. And I think it was a little bit more real for me because, and it must have been my brother-in-law, because somehow this information came through to me that his mom, somehow her car ended up being the car that James Garner drove in the movie.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, like, somehow that was, like, a factoid about the film that they introduced me. So they're like, let's watch the movie.
Hey, guys, this is a really good reason to watch it.
Yeah, the set, like, somehow they got that car, they purchased it, and she knew that was where it went, so we decided to watch it. And I think that just, even, like, as a kid, that just made it even more real, even though you think that would point to the fact that it's a movie, but it made it more upsetting for me. That it's like, that's a car, and there's aliens putting goo in the mouths. So, messed me up.
God.
Messed me up.
So I'm sure that people who've seen this movie can probably guess, but what scenes in particular do you remember terrifying you as a kid?
Well, the film culminates in an alien abduction sequence.
Boy, does it.
It could be argued that sequence is all the film has going for it.
Thank you for saying that, because I was going to say it. I was going to be like, can we talk about this?
I mean, it's basically a made-for-TV movie. And it doesn't help that on this rewatch, I was watching, like, the free-to-watch version, so there were commercials that would,
oh my God.
They're, like, trying to solve the mystery, and then it's like, buy Tide! And I was very confused.
Funny story about that. I messaged Mary Beth when I watched it. I was like, so I tried watching the free version, and the first time they went to a commercial, like 3 minutes in the movie, I'm like, nope, I'm gonna go buy this shit.
Yeah, I kept telling myself, I was like, should I just do it? But then my apathy just won, so I just stuck with it. But, I mean, the alien abduction sequence itself, like, you know, the guys all drive out to the forest, I guess that's what it's called, and then he gets abducted and he's thrown around by the light. And then you don't see him get sucked up, but, like, that's eerie.
Yeah.
But it's that alien abduction sequence that fucked me up. I mean, you have him being pulled down a hallway. The aliens, like, they look like greys, only in that their spacesuits look like a classic gray alien, but then underneath that, they're, like, all, like, wrinkly and, like, kind of like Gollum.
Yeah.
And then they're, like, dragging around, they kind of rip his clothes off. And shove, like, goo in him and put the giant body condom flesh sack on him and... And then the needles and the plugs and, oh my God. Why?
It is an unrelenting, I timed it, like little over 12 minutes of uninterrupted what the fuckery.
Oh.
That's like smack dab in the middle of this rather pedestrian mystery.
Yeah.
I was thinking, it's like, it feels like a true crime, like, made for TV Lifetime movie until you get to these awful alien abduction scene. I was like, the pacing is so fucking bizarre. And, like, it feels like a true crime drama. You know it's not because you see the aliens, but, like, it still kind of feels like it with James Garner as a cowboy and, like...
James Garner.
Just some marital issues with Robert Patrick, who's from Terminator 2, and I couldn't stop thinking about that. And then the alien abduction happens, and I'm like, holy shit, like, that was amazing. I'm sad that this movie has only 12 minutes of, maybe 15 of, like, actually scary footage.
When literally until that alien abduction, the main plot points of the movie are like, they're having a town meeting in a church, and then there's a question about whether or not polygraphs are valid.
Frankly, I don't care whether you pass or not. If you're lying, my machine will show it. If you're clean, it'll show that too.
How do we know you ain't been bought off? Make us look bad.
Cy Gilson is the best there is, boys. You're lucky to have him.
Like, those are the main...
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about polygraphs being a valid form of interrogation, I guess.
But those are the main plot points.
But, it's disappointing because, this setup in the forest with, the setup with them getting interrogated in the bar and then you see what happened in the forest, I thought that was a really good setup. And I was I texted Terry, I'm getting in my feelings. But I liked the setup with the interrogation in the bar and the flashbacks. And I thought, okay, I can I vibe with this. I like it. And then it just drops that completely. And the eeriness completely goes away. And then they're all right, cool. Just a regular old small town drama. Yeah. And then it picks back up with the abduction. But it's just it's so uneven. Yes. And I think, I don't know what I was, so this was the first time I ever saw this movie.
Oh, really?
Because one, I was terrified of aliens as a kid. So I just avoided it like the plague. I was I don't need to see it. Because the way that it's hyped, it's talked about so often is I thought it was a nonstop terrifying, awful thing. And then I watched it today. I'm what? I mean, do not get me wrong. That abduction sequence is fucking awesome and really intense. But it was at the end. And I guess I didn't know that. And I was oh. And I get it confused with Communion.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that one, but I've been wanting to see that because.
Oh, Anthony, you need to see it.
Anthony, seriously.
It is camp. It is the perfect camp movie because it has no idea it's campy.
It's so campy.
And that was Whitley Strieber being remember when I wrote The Hunger, but then I got abducted by aliens?
Right,
yes,
basically.
And he was so mad about that movie because Christopher Walken made him look like a total fucking moron because the whole movie is a joke. It's funny.
Yeah, we talked to Rob Sheridan about that movie and it had been, like Mary Beth, I got that movie and this movie confused in my childhood brain, and I only remember the scary parts. And that movie, rewatching it as an adult, is the campiest. What the fuck am I watching? Amazing, Christopher Walken on another level performance.
It's amazing.
I can't
It's
wait.
his best performance. He wears a giant hat.
All the good actors do.
It's just wild. But so this was played much more serious, obviously. It was played much more serious, and it just didn't do it for me with most of it.
Yeah.
But again, the alien abduction scene was just cool, now we're in this fucking crazy place that looks like it's covered in flesh, from Event Horizon, and there's a half ridiculous mutated corpse that's has its organs hanging out, and jelly everywhere. And I was
so much jelly.
Where did this come from?
Jelly.
So much jelly. They shove it in his mouth. That was so gross.
Well, and then when the part that freaked me out really early as a youth, even before they got to the abduction, or not to the abduction, but to the surgical table, when he's floating around in zero gravity cocoon room, the cocoonatarium, and then he
holding onto that
repels,
umbilical cord almost.
Yeah, he's slinging on that thing, and then he repels back into a cocoon and explodes into someone who's all desiccated, and he's got entrail goo on him. It's just is it a different film and different director?
Feels like it. It totally feels like it though, because I was this is really amazing, and I would love to see a more realized version of this because these two movies do not match up in my head. They do not match at all.
Because the rest is I remembered it being basically a made-for-TV movie. That's why even just rewatching this as an adult for this show, I was stunned. I didn't even know this cast was in it. I had no idea Robert Patrick or Craig Schaefer or Dee Sweeney or Zara Beth from Witchboard. I had no idea that they were in this film. James Garner. It's so weird. How did they get these people?
Yeah.
And why does nothing happen except for that one sequence at the end of the movie?
Well, I also think that it's kind of the power of that sequence, because honestly, you and I, Anthony, have been talking a little bit in DMs about this movie, about how I was not looking forward to rewatching it because I had all these traumatic memories of this movie. Yep. And it's really just, for me, the last 40 minutes of the movie. And I completely forgot about the setup for it. I completely forgot after the opening, which as an adult, like you said, Mary Beth, is still kind of effective. And I really liked the kind of shell-shocked behavior of them at the bar. And they're like, we got to tell the story right. It's almost like this kind of like, are they making it up? Are they not making it up type thing? And then it just sort of like doesn't do anything for like almost an hour. And I completely had forgotten about that movie. And I think that's probably where like I was probably bored as to death as a kid. And it was probably a combination of seeing that and seeing Communion, where it was like just these crazy alien moments that just sort of like lingered in my head. And I completely forgot the campy performance in one and the absolute boring small town drama in the other.
Yeah. But well, how old were you when you first saw this, Terry?
Gosh, well, it came out in 93. So I had to be about. I remember watching this with my parents when they had rented the VHS. So it probably was in late 93 or early 94. So I would have been 12.
Oh God, Terry, 13? That was the year I was born.
You know what?
Yeah, actually, now that I'm doing math, I'm realizing I would have been 93. Yeah, I would have been like 8 or something when I saw it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I am a baby.
Yeah, so I would have been 12 in 93, so I was either 12 or 13 when I saw this movie, because it wasn't in theaters, it was on VHS, and I had watched it with my parents. What I remember about this movie screwing me up was really the moment. Yes, the whole alien abduction thing has been seared in my head, but really the moment when he comes back and he is like naked and in the rain and like crouched over and just like not really there, and every time someone tries to touch him, he starts screaming.
Hey, Dana's right here.
Yes.
That, I think, still even as an adult, is a very effective scene, because the last half of the movie is really kind of a metaphor for PTSD. I mean,
oh, thank you for bringing it up, because I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
But like, and of course I don't think about that as a kid. All I think about is this poor man who has been missing for 5 days, and all of a sudden he's just there naked, completely out of his mind, like terrified he doesn't even recognize his family coming over to like, touch him and like put blankets on him and stuff. He's just so terrified. Yeah. And from that moment on, I just have little blips of memory of 12, 13-year-old Terry, of the condom placed over him, kind of like that is still an incredibly terrifying image. And when I reached out on Twitter about this movie to like kind of gauge people's reaction to it, that scene, and like someone had replied with an image of the face where it's like he has like just the one eye poking out in the mouth, and there's like the goo and the stuff in his mouth. That whole thing is so there's some really weird, freaky imagery in this movie, and like you said, Anthony, how is this the same movie like for an hour is this boring movie that has no personality whatsoever, and then all of a sudden it's like it changes. Like even in my notes I wrote, it changes on a dime an hour in, and all of a sudden we're like in a completely different movie.
Well, and that's like story beat wise, like how do they, they're like, oh my God, we got a call from Travis, that's his name. And then they go to pick him up from naked phone booth. And then instead of like, they're like the police are convinced that they killed him and all this stuff, and he's clearly like not well and bruised. So it's like the first thing they do isn't call the police or an ambulance, they call the UFO investigators who are like,
God.
How the aliens talk to you?
So like, what the fuck? I mean, I guess they kind of knew because they saw it happen, but at the same time, like, why is that the first person you call, these weirdos with the camera that are like interrogating your friend who is obviously very traumatized and can barely form a sentence?
Yeah, and I'm not advocating, I should also say, I'm not advocating to call the police when your friend gets abducted. I'm just saying, if in a story that you're in a movie, James Garner is convinced you killed your friend, I would want to call James Garner and say, suck it. Like, I found my friend.
I mean, valid. Or like, yeah, exactly. Or like call an ambulance.
That would
like,
be
hey,
the first call.
Like, hey, this guy is like really fucked up. Like, he should probably go to a doctor.
No, and his supposed best friend is like calling the UFO enthusiast who's there snapping pictures of him, and he's obviously not reacting well to the pictures happening, and just asking him all these questions about
Mr. Walton, can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food? Injection?
what do they look like? You know, they're concerned about the UFO. They're concerned about the event and not Travis. And that, as an adult, is such an upsetting thing to watch at that point. Mm-hmm. Because you see his family, his best friends, are not acting in his best interest at this point in this movie.
No.
Well, and there's also, like, one of the most haunting, and, like, I was actually surprised how haunting the shot was when it's the shot when the camera's outside and he puts his fingers in the window and there's, like, 4 fingerprints.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
It's so creepy. It's a really amazing shot, and I feel like I wish the movie was more like that, like, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think it would have been so good, but it is so amazing. Like, he puts his fingers on it and he flashes back.
Yeah, and you hear the one good moment with that ufologist is him being like, he's seeing something.
He's seeing something.
And like that's withholding information from the audience, and that's effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Filmmaking 101. But like Terry said, it is a really actually fascinating way to look at PTSD because they really do a good job of like the flashes of like images. I'm diagnosed with PTSD, and it did really like portray the experience of having like a flashback. Like it isn't always like this horrendous, like very long experience where you're frozen. It can just be flashes of images and you get fucked up and you're like, what's going on? Yeah. And it sucks. But I really appreciate a movie that is not a great movie from the 90s actually having a rather accurate portrayal of what like having a PTSD trigger can feel like. And like when he's hiding under the table, that really pulled up my heart.
Oh,
when
yeah.
he's hiding, it made me so sad, like hiding under the table when he like comes home and everyone's crowding around him and then he's hiding under the table, because I have felt that way before. Like I'm not abducted by aliens, or am I? But like from just your own traumatic experiences, like when you get so overwhelmed and you just want to hide and you just like don't want anyone to touch you or look at you. And then when the maple syrup touches his lips.
Travis, what's going on? Travis, what's wrong? Travis, are you okay? Travis, what's wrong? Travis!
And he is immediately sent back. Like that whole sequence is so well shot and so interesting, and how like it's like crossing between him being upset and the syrup like quickly going towards like spilling over and quickly moving towards his mouth, and then the close up on his lips, and all of a sudden he's back in the ship.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a cool, fascinating and sad way of depicting like how you can get triggered like that, and also just having that transition between the here and now and the past.
Yeah, it's so effective, and it's funny because it's like, I guess we keep talking about these like 2 different themes in the film or 2 different directors or styles, but it is like the first hour or whatever, the first part of the film is Robert Patrick's film, basically. Yeah. And also I was like, what? I'm attracted to Robert Patrick as a
yeah, that was weird. I was like
lumberjack.
It took me a moment to like realize who he was. I'm like, because I for some reason wasn't paying attention to the credits, and I was like looking at him going, who is that? I should know who this is. I'm like, he's kind of attractive.
I would like to know who this is.
Right? And then I realized it was Robert Patrick. I was like, oh, this is like giving me weird feelings.
Yeah.
Right, T-1000, or what's his name from X-Files later on?
Oh, right.
Oh, that's right.
Or faculty gym coach.
But then, that's right.
But then after that, once they find Travis again, then it's his movie. Mm-hmm. Up until then, the last scene where they decide to merge the 2 films, and then and
he lived in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and now
a huge
Robert
beard.
Patrick, yeah, he's like a hair metal mountain man. And the moral of the story is friendship.
But also, like, to me, he is the one that runs away while Travis has kids and gets married. And I think it is so interesting how, like, the person who went through a really intense trauma, like, did his best to kind of live a more normal life, and then the other guy, who I guess experienced a different kind of trauma, obviously, but like he ran away and hid in the woods from everybody, like a hermit, and it's like that was weird to me. But I guess everyone experiences their traumas differently. But I was like, fascinating. The guy who got abducted by aliens is like doing his goddamn best, and then this other guy was like, nope, fuck it, I'm out of here, and just is a cabin man.
Cabin Man, the movie. And then it's up to Travis to apologize to him.
Yes.
In the end, God. I was like, why is the onus on him when he's the one that got fucking abducted?
And the thing that I'm kind of piecing together now, like just based on what you were talking about, Anthony, is that yes, the first part of the movie, you start to feel bad for, what is his name, Patrick?
Mountain Man.
Mountain Man.
Cabin Man.
Cabin Man.
You start feeling bad for Mountain Man, Cody Cambria fan, who is like, he went back, he's trying to find his best friend, he's trying to do this, trying to do that, and then it's such a change in character, because the one part that I wrote down was when Travis is in the hospital, and Mountain Man says,
You son of a bitch. You hadn't have gotten out of the truck in the first place, none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, we're victim blaming now.
Yeah.
First of all. And second of all, we are showing your true colors. And then falling from there, just like seeing him in almost a comatose state in the car, and everyone is like tapping on the window.
Travis, can we have your autograph?
Autograph?
Yeah, you're famous. You've been to space.
Like he's an object that they want to get an autograph for. You're famous, you've been to space, as if like this should be some kind of wonderful experience. Look at the fame that you're going to have now. And can I get an autograph, by the way? And then, even the cop coming over is like, well,
autographs. You've become quite the celebrity. You enjoying it? Now, the word is that tabloids are put up quite a hunk of cash for your story rights. You've hit the big time. Congratulations.
You're famous now. Tabloids will have lots of money for your story. Congratulations. It's like these moments of you seeing what this man is going through in the movie, and the way people are treating him and reacting to him. And even at the party, right before he like hides under the table, everyone is sort of annoyed. Like, they're like, where's Travis? And his brother just look like, who knows? It's Travis, right? And I'm like, dude, he was gone for 5 days. I don't care if he was abducted by aliens or not. If he was gone for 5 days and missing in some like weird state in the forest, and this is how you're treating him, boy.
And so, okay, this is a very weird detail that I noticed, because I really like cryptids and aliens and Mothman.
Oh, yeah.
So he has eye. Well, obviously we see him get like almost lobotomized with the needle into his eye.
Yep.
Which is fucked up.
That was the part, I think, as a kid, because I already have like eye issues. That was one of the main triggers.
And the milky stuff before it that was pooling in his eye.
That must be awesome to listen to. I hope listeners enjoy those sounds. But it made me think of not just the part where it's like kind of the needle in his tear duct, but he had like wounds on the outside of his eyes too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it made me think of this phenomenon that happens to people who see UFOs or Mothman. It's called, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a radiation burn around your eyes.
Oh.
When you are exposed to like the radiation of a UFO or something that is like extraterrestrial, and you get people who had like seen Mothman had gotten like, it looked like it's like similar to conjunctivitis, and get like red eyes and like inflamed eyes, and their eyes just, like swell up a little bit. And so that just made me think about it, like about how people who have seen UFOs kind of experience a weird sensation in their eyes from being exposed to the light.
That's so cool. I never thought of that, but I mean, but I think that also, that's something that this movie does. I think why it stuck with me, even as bad maybe as the rest of the movie is, why it stuck with me is that you always see like the survivor after, and they're fine just telling their wacky story. Mm-hmm. But in this, it's like the body is also a site of trauma.
Yes,
which
exactly.
Speaks to, I think, also the PTSD underpinnings that you're talking about and that are absolutely there. It's like the trauma is physicalized.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because I feel like a lot of the time in these movies, they come back and they're closed still, and it's only been like a couple hours, and they're like, oh, I was anally probed, because that's the worst thing that can happen to a person, I guess.
Yeah, they'll have like
texting...
missing time, and then they have to get hypnotism or something.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I talked to Tay about this today, but also when we talked about communion, how like aliens are always probing people, and like the trauma comes from that, which is a very fascinating choice. But here, like, he is covered in scabs and wounds, and like his, like you said, his body is a site of trauma, which you never see in UFO films. Like the body is never, there's no marks, there's no indicator of that. But in this one, like you said, his face is very obviously harmed.
Yeah, and even in like, I mean, with my unsolved mysteries brain coming in here, like, you know, there's this idea that would always come out of a lot of ufology, at least from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where it was like, people don't find out, or they don't have trauma evidence until like later during surgeries or things. Doctors will find like the implants is like something that would come up, but otherwise it's not like it's something that's revealed after the fact, but that he comes back with these things, and and it's like right there on him. It's interesting.
One thing that I do appreciate about the alien aspects of this movie is that it's different than the normal.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, like, I mean, okay, you can tell that this movie was filmed post Alien.
Yes.
And Aliens, right? Because like the pods are so goopy, and like it has this very like organic alien feel to it with the structure of the whole place. But like it's doing something that is different than the typical Greys creatures, right? Where it's like usually just a very sterile, you know, location that they bring you to, and in here it's like the complete opposite of it. So I do appreciate that aspect of it, even as an adult. But I do have, I know the answer from Mary Beth, but do you do you, either of you, do you believe in aliens and alien abductions? Anthony?
I want to believe to be a poster on a wall. I would love to believe that there's aliens. I definitely, you know, think unidentified flying objects occur. I've always been fascinated by it. I've always been interested. The fear goes so far back in my being from Unsolved Mysteries. And I remember even staying out with my uncle. He lived out in the desert. Same uncle that introduced me to my first drag queen, but, staying out with him, and he had a friend also staying on his property out in this like wide open, you know, all horizon desert. And, the guy was terrified of aliens, and he would tell stories about sitting in his van at night, every night going to sleep and like watching and waiting for the lights. And like that would just creep me out even more. So I think even if I don't particularly believe that Greys exist, like I also grew up with sleep paralysis growing up, so I know.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know how your brain can like trick you into seeing things, and you have these experiences that really, I think there's a lot of overlap between sleep paralysis and alien abduction experiences. That I think you could kind of say that there's a correlation, and that one might be the other. But the fear is something that I just have been conditioned into. It's just part of me. So no, but yes.
And Mary Beth?
Yes.
Good answer.
Good answer.
It's so fun. I always like feel weird saying that, because I'm like, I swear, like I am not one of those like. Even me saying it, I can't even say it. Look, I think this shit's real. I don't even care. Whatever. Like, think whatever you want. I have a UFO tattoo. Like, I grew up being terrified of aliens, mostly because my dad tormented me with like alien abduction stories and shit, because he thought it was funny, and it wasn't to me as a 4-year-old. But then like I really loved the X-Files, but then that got into my brain, and then like my stepdad had experiences of seeing things. A couple of my friends have had really interesting experiences, and like I just am so like, I think it's more like I just think it, like I would just love it. Like I just want to believe it, and I think it's so fucking cool. And like these experiences I hear from people are so interesting, and I'm just like, yeah, fuck yeah, I believe you. Because like I don't know, I just believe that there is something else out there. I don't necessarily think they're gonna come here and like take us, and like I don't necessarily believe in a lot of things about like how they treat people and like what they do with people. But I don't know. I think they're real. So that's my spiel on that.
I love it. Own it. I think, too, like I've always loved philosophically, I've loved the idea that aliens are just us from the future coming back to experiment on ourselves and figure out some weird, who knows what. So maybe they're just time travelers. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I've always been intrigued.
Now, about Travis Walton in his story.
Oh yeah, okay,
that's right.
It's actually based on a true
This
story.
is actually based on a true story. I use that in quotations because there's two things. One, so the story that they came up with, it happened at such a coincidence where they were going to miss their deadline to finish a logging job, after which they would have been docked 10% of their contract unless an act of God prevented completion. And then he gets abducted for 5 days.
Oh.
So
that's not an act of God, that's an act of alien. Come on now.
So there's a skeptic, his name is Michael Shermer, that has had so many issues with this case. And like during the time there's like interviews even with his brother, who confessed that he's not even missing. He knows where he's at, and I know where he's at. And like when they did the thing that the movie does differently is that, or at least I think it does differently, is that instead of having like his the lie detectors by some lie detector specialist, supposedly in real life it was part of the UFO organization.
Oh no,
that did the polygraph test.
Oh fuck off.
Oh no.
Oh fuck off.
Which is like a huge thing at the end when they bring up that title card that says like what happened, and they're like, they took the polygraph again and they passed. Like,
yeah.
So it's like, but also I'm like, I've seen Real Housewives. Lisa Vanderpump passed a polygraph and she was lying. Like, they're not real. You can manipulate them.
Also, I want to know what it's like to become a person who just reads polygraph tests.
Yeah.
Right? But here's the fun little nugget is that did you guys remember I think it was on Fox, the show The Moment of Truth?
No.
Oh, that rings a bell.
So it was in like it was early 2000s, and it was the show where like they would get people on and they would ask them questions, and it would be in front of a live studio audience and they'd have to like tell the truth, and if they could like keep telling the truth and pass, the money would go up. Well, Walton was a guest in 2008 on this show, and they asked him.
Question 15 is simply this. Were you abducted by a UFO on November 5th, 1975?
Yes.
That answer is false.
False.
Oh,
he
okay.
ended up failing on live TV.
But also, like, let me read this from the Wikipedia page, so obviously take it with a grain of salt. The National Enquirer, okay, they were awarded a $5,000 prize for best UFO case of the year after Walton and his coworkers passed a polygraph test administered by the National Enquirer and the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. Walton, his older brother, and his mother were described by the Navajo County, Arizona sheriff as longtime students of UFOs.
Yep. Yeah.
Suspicious.
Interesting.
The truth is out there, and it's not with him. God damn it.
I just hope in real life, Robert Patrick's character really does have that, like, feathered hair and that big beard in his cabin.
Right?
Oh, me too.
Please.
That's all I request from real life.
So, do we want to give this our ratings?
Yeah.
All right, Terry, how many freaky skin sacks, is that we're calling it? Freaky skin sacks?
Yes.
Yeah. How many,
unfortunately,
freaky skin sacks out of 5 do you give Fire in the Sky?
I mean, that is kind of a loaded question. Loaded like the pods that keep people in, I suppose. But like for the first hour of the movie, this is like a too fleshy skin. What is it? Fleshy skin?
Too fleshy.
Oh,
Too Fleshy was my 90s hip hop band.
But I think the last 40 minutes is actually rather interesting, and I would give probably like that 40-minute chunk of the movie a 3.5, and the beginning I'd probably give it a 2. So like I'm gonna probably say 2.5 fleshy skin sacks, which is disgusting, but also very on point. What about you, Mary Beth?
I am going to give it actually 3 fleshy skin sacks out of 5, despite how much shit I've been talking about it. I am really, really impressed with the alien abduction scene, which I think really speaks to the strength of this film in terms of just those 12 minutes. Like, those 12 minutes have just been cemented in so many people's brains for so long. And I did really enjoy the set design and the alien design and everything about it. So, and the kind of lead up with symptoms of PTSD. So I will give it a 3 out of 5 for the way it has both traumatized generations of people and the way it realizes a very terrifying kind of maybe more original-ish look at the alien narrative.
Yeah. What about you, Anthony? How many fleshy skin sacks out of 5, and what is the final word on this movie?
Well, final verdict on Fire in the Sky. You know, I saw this movie as a youth, messed me up. I saw the alien sequence again much later in my life. I was actually doing video for RuPaul's Drag Race World Tour, and I did... Sharon Needles had me do a video that was just the Fire in the Sky abduction sequence that she would perform in front of as an alien. And so I had, I had to, I spent like literally 20 hours watching that needle go into that eye over and over and over as I edited that damn video for her backing visuals. And I was still traumatized. Watching this movie again and seeing that it really is a made for TV movie, let's be real, it's a 2 flesh sacks. However, with that alien abduction sequence, like you said, Mary Beth, I think this movie warrants 3 flesh sacks out of 5.
What a weird movie, man. Like, what a weird, like, divisive film, and divisive in its own footage. Like, but...
divisive by its own making.
Divisive by its own making, which is really weird, and I can't think of many films like it. But you know what? Respect.
Respect.
Respect Cabin Man.
I want that on a
I
t-shirt.
just wish he'd come out with like a banjo or something.
Oh my god. When he's like, they're gonna come back, I'm like, what? Who is who now? I'm so confused that the characters been swapped.
Yes.
Anyway.
That's actually what the needle in the eye was for, is to swap out their brains.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's why the sequel is like twins, and that you don't know which one's which.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's wacky.
Oh, no. Oh, man. Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us to talk about Fire in the Sky. Where can our listeners find you? And do you have anything coming up you'd like to share?
Thank you for having me. I can't believe we got to talk about this movie.
I can't either.
You can find me. I'm across social media at the Carla Rossi. My website is also thecarlarossi.com. You can find out about Gaylords at gaylordsofdarkness.com. And in terms of what I have coming up, if you pay attention to my social media, I will be actually slowly rolling out some videos of our queer horror performances, edited as like with little like Elvira kind of bumpers from Carla, the
Oh, that's amazing.
Fuck yeah.
The hostess with the grossness will pop up in the beginning of these videos.
Fuck yeah.
And so I'm going to be making some new online content for y'all. And you can just keep it with that through either at Queer Horror PDX. That's our Instagram for queer horror. It's also queer-horror.com. Or once again through my Carla Rossi social media. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome. And so, listeners, you have heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Fire in the Sky? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, keep the conversation going by chatting with us on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Steve Barnold for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you to everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children!
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.